Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi, Radhika.
Hey, Sumit.
Good to have you at Tech in Asia, Singapore. Thank you for being here. We are going to be spending the next half an hour talking about the e-commerce scene in India, which is very exciting this year. Alibaba is coming in a big way through its local partner, Paytm. The local leader, Flipkart, is merging with its main rival, Snapdeal. And of course, Amazon is pouring billions into capturing the Indian market after failing to make headway in China. And then there is this other unicorn that people outside India may not know that much about, which is yours, Radhika, ShopClues. Why don't people know that much about it?
You know, I think good use of advertising money that people outside India and many times in tier 1 cities and metropolitan cities in India don't know about ShopClues either. So, you know, you mentioned the entire breadth of the e-commerce players in India in the same breadth. But there is a significant difference in what we are trying to do versus what Amazon and Flipkart are trying to do. I won't talk about Alibaba as yet because there's still some way to go before they enter India in any way or form. But Flipkart and Amazon are addressing the head categories in India. So they're all about selling mobile phones. They're all about selling smartphones, branded fashion, branded products. ShopClues, on the other hand, is a dark horse. And we have focused completely on selling unstructured categories. So we're about selling unstructured categories like unbranded fashion, smartphones, refurbished smartphones, smartphones under the price of $80, and home and kitchen. These are all fairly large categories for us. So we're different from the other players in 3 main ways. Firstly, the consumers we target. You talked about the fact that not many people know about us. We're very, very focused on tier 2, tier 3 consumers. We're focused on what we call the real India or Bharat. So these are consumers who are living in small towns and cities in rural India. We are focused on categories that I talked about, unstructured categories. And finally, we are a marketplace in every true sense of the word. We have 500,000 small and medium merchants on the platform.
So this is something that the audience here may relate to in the sense that you have a large market and you have very large players like Flipkart, Amazon, and Alibaba is definitely coming in this year. And yet, there is, you are saying, a segment of the market, a segment of consumers which are not being served. So there are hidden opportunities.
Absolutely.
So what is it from your experience that you can share? How did you find this opportunity and how did you go after it?
So India is a country of 1.3 billion consumers. Out of that, barely 50 to 60 million consumers are shopping online right now. So the opportunity is absolutely huge. We started in 2011, and our thought process was to start an e-commerce marketplace that is similar to the way people shop offline in India. At that time, most of the players looked like malls, like they do today as well. That means that they're selling branded stuff. They're selling stuff that's available in malls. If you want to address India as a whole and be able to sell products to people from every geography, every region, then the only way to address it is by taking the local bazaars online. And the only way to take the bazaars online is by following a marketplace model. Today, a lot of the players are a marketplace by sheer virtue of the fact that it's a regulatory requirement to be a marketplace. But you're a true marketplace when you have 500,000 merchants on the platform, and you are being able to serve the entire long-tail categories, which is what we are trying to do.
It's not just about the marketplace. I mean, the consumer segment is different. You're going after a consumer segment which probably has a monthly income of 1,200 Singapore dollars.
Absolutely.
And you've said that you're going after consumers in the tier 2 plus
Yes.
smaller towns. And you have unbranded products. Now, unbranded products sold to consumers who look for affordability, that kind of translates to lower quality products, right?
I don't know if I'll call it a lower quality product. So far we've talked about the differentiation that ShopClues has amongst all the players. Let me bring up one more point, which has kind of become a bit of a sore point in the entire Indian e-commerce system, e-commerce space, and that is unit economics, profitability. Now, when we talk about the unstructured categories, or we talk about lower price point products, it is also the ability to be able to make money on those products. And that is where I think our business model kicks in. Very proud of the fact that we are probably the only marketplace in India right now that is contribution margin positive and very close to profitability, in a much better space than most of the other players are.
So how does that happen? I mean, are your margins high?
So when you are a marketplace that is catering to the masses, that is catering through the unstructured products, and that is a true marketplace that is working with all the different merchants and not just led by 5 odd merchants, what happens over there is, in the unstructured categories, our margins are significantly higher than in the branded categories. We get a bigger take rate than those, and our direct costs become lower because let me complete that. So just 500,000 merchants on the platform, right? If you're based out of Bangalore, Sumit, we will cater your products from a region of about 500 kilometers within where your location is. So my direct cost of fulfilling your order is significantly lower as well. And all of that plays out into the unit economics. Now, if I'm selling a smartphone which has a 1% take rate, which is being shipped out of Bangalore to all the places across India, of course my margins are very, very low.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, building an online business has a lot of costs involved, which, I mean, the kind of markets that you're trying to replicate, these smaller markets selling cheaper products to small town India, they don't have those costs, right? I mean, you're building an online business with a lot of upfront costs to set it up.
So I think, and I feel like I keep repeating the same thing here, but it's the fact that we are a marketplace, no inventory whatsoever. And, you know.
So how close are you to profitability? In the last financial, I mean, the publicly known financial results, you had something like $60 million
that was last
net losses.
year, yes, yes. So we are looking at being profitable about second quarter next year. That's about where we are right now. And I think going back to the point of how do you get profitable with this, a bit of a secret sauce involved in that, of course. But apart from that, I think it's also capital efficiency in pretty much every aspect of what we do. Let's look at the amount of money that has been raised by the players in India. There is Flipkart, which has, at last count, raised about $4.5 billion. There is Amazon with infinite resources, let me just put it at that. Snapdeal, which has raised about $1.92 billion, and we all know where they are right now, in the midst of a transaction. And we've raised about $200 million, out of which a significant portion is still in the bank. This is the money raised. Now look at the orders that are being shipped out. We are shipping out about 1/5, 1/6 the number of orders that are being shipped out by an Amazon or a Flipkart, which are both about the equal size right now, and positive unit economics already. So obviously doing something right. Obviously the fact that we are targeting a customer base that nobody else has been looking at, a customer base that is loyal to us with strong cohorts, has worked very well in our advantage. And the fact that we've been able to control direct costs without having our own logistics, in-house logistics, has worked out pretty well for us as well.
I'll take you up on the loyalty factor. I mean, we're talking about people who are aspirational, right? I mean, they will also want to move towards branded products, or let's say more reliable products at some point of time. So what is your customer retention rate, and how do you expect to keep that going? Because aspirationally, I would think that if somebody can afford a branded product from Amazon, and especially with the kinds of discounts that they're giving in India. I mean, I've just come from Bangalore, where they have like 60% discount going on. I mean, That's crazy.
Amazing.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, I accept the point that you're going after a different consumer segment, but that consumer segment will evolve, right?
So let me take an example. Cricket, hugely popular in India. Virat Kohli, hugely popular cricket player in India. He wears a blue Nike shirt, and anybody who wants to, any of the millions and billions of cricket followers that we have who want to wear that blue Nike shirt that Virat has worn are going to go straight to a Myntra or a Jabong, which is the epitome of getting in-season products. Anybody who's looking for a 40–50% discount on it in another couple of years will probably head to a Flipkart or an Amazon, as you said, amazing discounts. But there is this whole segment, which is my segment, which wants a blue dry fit shirt that looks like the one that Virat Kohli has worn, but can still not afford to buy a Nike shirt at 50% off. That's still a good 2,000 rupees, it's about $50. He'll come to us to buy a blue dry fit shirt for 300 rupees. But you're right, he's aspirational. He wants to get a fix of the brand, so he'll probably buy a 150 rupee deodorant along with that. And that's a Nike deodorant, and that's his fix of the brand. So that consumer is still not being catered to by Amazon. Just by selling a Nike or an Adidas or a Puma at 50%, 60%, 70% off, you don't cater to that particular segment, because for that segment, those products are still unaffordable. India, look at India literally as multiple countries built into one.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so essentially you're going after Amazon in a different way from the Flipkarts and Snapdeals, because they've kind of tried to beat Amazon at their own game and finding it difficult, whereas you found a segment through your merchandising and through your unique merchant network that can find a segment where you can kind of challenge Amazon.
Absolutely. It's not even about challenging Amazon. There are cities and pin codes and areas where we deliver where Amazon is not even present currently. And the products that are being bought in these areas are not available on Amazon currently. We have the largest selection of products in categories such as home and kitchen, in categories such as auto accessories, in categories such as health and fitness, which are under the price of 500 rupees, which are not available on any of the other platforms. And the only way to be able to do that is the 500,000 merchants.
So let me bring in Alibaba at this point, because Alibaba has made a fresh investment in Paytm has split up into two, the payments arm and the e-commerce arm. Alibaba has made a fresh investment in the e-commerce arm and kind of taken the lead. And I've myself met a lot of Chinese retailers in Bangalore who are checking out the market because they're very interested in the possibilities that Alibaba opens up for them. So, I mean, all the signs are that Alibaba is going to come into India in a big way this year and take on Amazon on neutral ground. That's a problem for you too as well, right? Because the Chinese vendors on Amazon will kind of have a similar positioning to your cheaper products, maybe unbranded, unknown products, but at very great price points.
Chinese vendors on Alibaba.
On Alibaba.
On Alibaba. So lots of respect for what Alibaba has done, right? Across the world, China, amazing. But if you really go back to, and I'm sure they'll build out the smartest team, et cetera, et cetera. If you go back to when Alibaba was, early days of Alibaba, and if you remember how eBay played out in China, Alibaba went with a zero commission, and famous last words of Meg Ryan at eBay, of Meg Whitman at eBay were, free is not a business model. Every geography is different. Every market is different. To concede to Alibaba way before they enter the country is premature.
Not concede, I'm saying that they will be, unlike Amazon, they might be positioned similarly as you, because there is no denying the fact that manufacturing costs in China are very, very low.
But at
and
this
they
point,
will bring
but having said that, at this point, if you look at what Alibaba is doing in India with Paytm Mall, it seems to be a more similar model to Tmall, which is, again, brand-oriented versus Taobao. Now, if they were coming in with complete Taobao strategy, yes, we would look at them twice, and no competition or no player in the market is insignificant, and least of all Alibaba. But at this point, I think it's important for us to keep focusing on the tier 3, tier 4 rural consumers and bring them online. We're playing the role of a market creator in those areas. And the fact is that our merchant base and our strong, engaged merchant base definitely gives us an upper hand at this point, at least.
The partnership with Paytm obviously opens up tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 for Alibaba, because Paytm has signed up, thousands and thousands of merchants for the payment side of their business. So, I mean, one would imagine that Alibaba would quickly gain access to tier 2 plus India.
And the consumer?
So, what does it take to build up the consumer base? What does it take to build up the market?
I think it's both the merchant and the consumer. You'd be surprised that out of the 500,000 merchants that we have on the platform, about less than 10% are Paytm merchants as well. In fact, a lot of them, if you look at our platform, both on the consumer end and the merchant end, the most oft used payment tool is net banking, and now some of them are moving to UPI. The wallet hoo-ha is great, and it is great for consumers in tier 1 cities. It is great for for merchants in tier 1 cities, but our merchants and our consumers are not wallet consumers, and even our merchants at this point are not using any of the payment, any of the Paytm transaction system.
So,
fairly confident that our 5 years of hard work, our strong merchant base will hold us true.
The e-commerce scene in India, and especially also the consumer internet space as a whole, there's been a huge correction over the past 1 year. E-commerce growth, took off in 2015, but it was quite tepid last year. And I think the first quarter of 2017 continues to be slow. So in terms of, your aim to get profitable, how does that impact you? Because the growth has kind of tapered off, looks like.
So overall growth in, India has to be looked at as 2 segments. There is India 1, which is the top 50 million odd consumers, which are the ones who are shopping at Flipkart, Amazon, and Snapdeal. The next 20 to 30 million of current consumers and 400 million consumers that are waiting to come online are coming online in droves at this point. Over the last 3 to 4 months, we've seen about a significant number of new consumers come online, and they're all being driven at this point by Reliance Jio, which provided free data plans and free access to the internet in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And there has been a growth in the market, not noticeable because the consumer that's sitting out of metros and the consumer that's sitting out of tier 1 has taken a step back from shopping online because the discounts went away temporarily. I think as Flipkart bolsters its treasury and as Amazon goes head-to-head with it, some of it will come back, and we'll see a growth in, and as Alibaba enters as well, we'll see a growth in consumer transactions in tier 1, but the number of transacting consumers from tier 3, tier 4, and from Bharat have gone up in the past 6 months.
Where are these numbers from, and what can you share with us?
So about 60% of our orders come in from tier 3, tier 4 cities, and out of these consumers, about 70% are consumers who have never shopped online before, and this is a study that we did with one of the leading market research companies in India. And most of them, or 92% of them to be precise, have used Jio as a way to get online. The first transaction that they typically land up making is either a starter smartphone or a home product for them.
Jio is a telco which
Jio
is
yes. So
disrupting
Reliance Jio is a telco product in India that actually provided free internet access over the last 1 year, and now at a hugely discounted rate. Broadband penetration and you know, India with Prime Minister Modi's influence has BharatNet is a new initiative that the government has launched, which increases broadband penetration in the interiors of India. That is yet to show impact, but that is showing up as well in our numbers, where broadband penetration is going up there.
So essentially you're saying that the consumer internet space in India has a lot of untapped opportunities and possibilities of new businesses.
Huge. Less than 2 to 3% of Indian retail is online as yet. And this is across the country. If you look at the rural area, which is where 70% of India lives, less than 0.2% of retail is online. So the game is just starting. The race hasn't even begun.
But investors seem to have become quite lukewarm to India. I mean, just before this, there was a panel discussion earlier on where somebody said that India is written off from a consumer internet play. So you don't share that view?
Not at all. Not at all. We should talk to these same investors in another year or so.
In fact, somebody pointed out to me in the morning that apparently there's an IVCA report out that India is the top destination for venture capital going forward. Would you agree with that? What's been your experience?
Absolutely. I think consumer internet in India is just starting off. Again, 1.3 billion people, less than 70 billion people who are shopping online. There is a 400 billion people who are online but haven't made a purchase as yet. And I'm talking e-commerce in general. But consumer internet has a long way to go, huge potential, too early to be written off.
What's been your experience of, I mean, you became a unicorn last year after you raised money from major investors, including GIC of Singapore, Tiger Global, and Nexus. So in selling this idea of tier 2 India, how did you, because these are investors outside, how did you do it?
I think there are a couple of things that are more misconceptions than anything else. And part of it is that India is, urban India and rural India are absolutely the same, or India is one big country and people come in and everybody's buying smartphones online and that's where the race ends. I think very important to look at India as multiple different regions, and we've been able to carve that out in our strategy through the merchant approach that we have. If you compare a kitchen in New York to a kitchen in Atlanta, or to a kitchen in San Francisco, or even a kitchen in Alaska, in the US, 98% of the products will be very similar. Now do the same exercise in India and compare a kitchen in Kashmir to a kitchen in Kanyakumari, and anywhere in the middle to Calcutta and Mumbai either, I can assure you about 60% of the products will be different. For a large retailer to be able to address that, through an inventory-based model or through a model which caters through 10 or 15 odd large merchants is not possible. We need a business model where there are multiple merchants who are able to cater to the requirements of the entire country. I personally think that e-commerce in India is going to play out similar to offline commerce in the US, where there are multiple players that coexist. There is a Neiman Marcus that coexists with a Macy's, coexists with a Nordstrom, with a Target and a Walmart. Similarly, there are going to be some multiple players, maybe 3, 4 multiple players that will coexist in the horizontal space.
I think the main skepticism is about the opportunity to make money, the money-making possibility in an area where affordability is such a key factor and margins may be thin, although you're saying your margins are high. So I don't understand how your margins are high in tier 2 plus India.
So I think that's something for us to play out and the rest to see. I'm hoping that our investors will be in a good shape after this entire thing plays out. When we look at margins in tier 2, tier 3, tier 2, tier 3 is more a fulfillment opportunity, right? The products that they are buying needs to be with a higher margin. Our margins go up to about 40-odd%. And certain categories, they are 40%. Few of our head categories, the margins are up to 40%. And the entire game is about managing fulfillment. It's about managing the direct cost aspect of it. Different models, some of them work, some of them need tweaking.
To play the devil's advocate, Snapdeal was talking about profitability and going to an IPO, and now it seems to be merging with Flipkart. You are talking about profitability by the end of the year and maybe an IPO next year. Or could it take a turn towards aligning with one of these big players, Alibaba on one side, and Flipkart on the other, backed by Tencent?
Firstly, comparing us, I'm a little offended at that, but I'll put that to the side. You're asking me to gaze in my crystal ball and tell you what's going to be the future of the entire game. I think not saying no to any of the options at this point. I know Kylie was on here before this, and he said, is founder sanity a myth? And I think you need to be a little bit insane to be a founder. And that's where we are. We are focused on an IPO. That's our path. That is what we are building towards.
And the only e-commerce IPO in India has been Infibeam. But Infibeam is a very different business. They haven't looked at the kinds of scale that you're looking at, right?
So Infibeam is an interesting proposition. They have, out of all the players, I would say that they have a little more similarity towards us than the others. Not just in terms of our consumer business. There's a huge amount of merchant business that we have that we don't necessarily talk about. So the body of the car is the consumer business that we have, all the customers, the categories that we talked about. But we also have a lot of platform monetization, services that we provide to the merchant, 500,000 merchants that we are dragging into the digital space, and there's a significant revenue that comes from that portion as well. So similar to Infibeam, and Infibeam has done a good job, great results.
Just to get into the managing the business in a complicated area such as e-commerce, when one of your investors is, you have a common investor with Snapdeal, which is Nexus. And another one, Tiger Global, is a common investor with Flipkart. So actually the context of my question was that there must be so many pulls between these investors, right? And
I think in many ways, I feel that should speak to the strength of the business, the fact that both Nexus and Tiger Global invested in us after they had made their investments in the other businesses, whether that's Snapdeal or Flipkart. Speaks to the fact that we are a very differentiated business than the other two, and that they saw that there is credibility in the team, in the way we are executing. Is there pull within the entire boardroom? Yeah, boardroom dynamics are, again, going back to Kylie, a little bit insane.
Just a little bit on the personal issues that you've had to deal with in focusing on your business, because your husband was part of the business and he left, Sandeep Aggarwal. So how did you, for people, for couples who get into business and have problems personally, and how you get your focus back on your business and how you move forward? You share with us.
So I think Tolstoy said this, and a little bit of a twist to it, that happy marriages are all alike and unhappy marriages are unhappy in their own way. Similarly, I think happy founding teams are all alike and unhappy co-founding teams land up to be different in different ways. I think it's all about focus, really. I typically don't talk about my personal life, but I can simply say that running a business with its ups and downs, whether it is your personal life, because personal life doesn't stop, it continues along with the fact that you're growing and you're working on a business on a full-time basis. it's all about prioritization, and if you have a strong partner, a strong friend, a strong spouse that you'd like to start a business with, I continue to believe that that's possibly the best team to do that.
Anything specific you can share about how you refocused and how you moved forward from there? Because it would have been difficult with all the media attention on it and all the distractions to refocus. Anything that you did personally to refocus on the business?
Ignore the media. Sorry, I'm saying that in the Tech in Asia conference, but really, you know, whether through the ups or the downs, the best is to ignore the media. Focus on the business. I think that's keeping it in perspective is very important, why you're doing what you're doing and where that's going to take you. There are always going to be naysayers. Best to say bye to them.
So on that note, thank you so much, Radhika. You shared an aspect of the e-commerce scene in India which people don't know that much about, and the fact that there are so many opportunities even when there are very large players around. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I won't give up.